brackish groundwater basin. The Reynolds plant's been operating since 1999, so we're talking, what, 9 years. During that period of production, we've been monitoring all the wells throughout the formation. And currently, we have not seen an overdraft of that basin, and we've not seen an issue with subsidence, or where the surface of the soil starts to compress and actually drop, like it has done in certain areas of the state. As a result of that, in the research we're doing with U.S. Geological Survey, we think that there's a rather large supply of brackish groundwater that would help to develop additional small plants that could be placed in the San Diego area and in the South Bay area. And then these plants would deliver treated water right into the system rather than moved into a large, expensive aqueduct that transfers somewhere else. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and what the prospect that you thought of that?
Well, if things work well with permitting and some of the issues are related to the concentrate discharge, we should be able to move from 4 to 10 million gallons per day within the next few years. Right now we have a feasibility analysis on a new plant on the Otay River system, similar to the Reynolds facility. If that can go in coupled with a brine discharge, that could be maybe 5 years out. And so depending on funding and the permitting requirements with some of the nuances, if you will, sometimes can take extra time.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
One of the things we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about sewer rates and our sewage system, and it's quite interesting how the issue of treatment and disposal can actually sort of be also a little bit of our solution to creating some additional capacity in in recycled water. And I know that the city of Chula Vista is working with both districts, and Councilmember Rittenden and myself are members of the task force, and we're very, very interested in how that's moving forward. Anything to share with us?
How much time did you have? I would recommend that we bring back more of the details in the interagency group, but frankly, we have been working together with Otay, Sweetwater, and the city of Chula Vista with Scott Tulloch, and we've been evaluating different ways that we can work together to combine some of the benefits of advanced treatment of wastewater and the utilization of recycled water. And I can frankly also tell you that with Otay Water District's large investments so far in distribution system, it looks more promising with Otay because they have some of that infrastructure. We have developed an alternative supplies using brackish groundwater that does not require an alternative supply system or distribution system. So we do not have the city of Chula Vista, National City, and Bonita that are not plumbed with purple pipe for distribution. In the next 10 years, we're looking at indirect potable reuse, which is a large terminology for what used to be called toilet.
Don't say it.
Well, frankly, I think we need to aggressively communicate that because it speaks to the quality of our water after it's advanced treated wastewater as compared to the quality of our raw water supply. And if you look at our significant source of raw water supplies from the Colorado River, Las Vegas, many other cities put in advanced treated wastewater into the river system, and it's already a part of this. So it really speaks to the quality of water, both on the raw side and the treatment side, and the level of treatment required. So that's going to probably be a number of years out, 5 to 10 years.
Well, and I think that, we're particularly talking about conservation is certainly a way of life and will always be in this region. I think that the reuse of water is going to be a way of life, and frankly, it is quite foolish for us to just take it and take a very expensive process and then dump it in the ocean. I think there's groundwater recharge, there's live stream discharge, there's recycled uses, and I don't have so much of a problem with the recycled potable uses. I just have problems with, that T to T distinction, because I think that that's a misnomer. I think that was just coined to scare people, and really the science is so much better today, and frankly we don't have the luxury of overlooking any possible solution that may be out there.
I believe that will take a very comprehensive public dialogue before we even go down that path. And I can tell you right now, Sweetwater Authority is specifically not looking at that because we're looking at other supplies. There are limited supply options, and they all come at a cost. And we find that the most effective cost for us right now for new supply is local development of brackish groundwater, followed by seawater desalination. Because we don't have the infrastructure, the cost of recycled water is quite high for Sioux Lake.
We're having a number of high school students tonight for the government class, so you might define that term to them. It would get their attention.
Toilet to tap is something I think that we read about in the newspapers, that you hear on TV, or certain politicians use that to describe recycled water for potable uses, which is for human consumption. And you know, while 5 or 10 years ago, I think the science or the technology was a little spotty, it's vastly improved, and I think that there are technologies that can deliver water very safely and very efficiently for us. Maybe not today, but certainly something in the future we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, first, let me just say thank you, Councilman Castaneda, for your comments. I don't want to have to go back over them, but I think that's, you know, the sorts of things you're talking about are going to be very important, I think, to the supply of water in our city. It really points to the issue that our water supply problem may not be so much environmental, but or you know, just the lack of rainwater in our environment, our local climate and so forth, but political in a lot of ways. And so I hope that you know, we can, as political leaders, we can engage the dialogue and try to make the best sense of the technology and the challenges that we have for water. But I'd like to ask both of you what you would ask of the city. I mean, you're here presenting to us and giving us a lot of good information that we need to have. But if you had 2 or 3 things to ask of the city, what would they be?
As I mentioned in the past, you know, we didn't have to work as closely together. We coordinated our development plans and all those kind of things, and that was great. The water supplies were fairly plentiful and things kind of rolled along. Well, again, those days are past. So first off, the city, this community depends on orderly growth and all the plans that you've laid forward and the things that you've worked on. How do we integrate those water supplies? And so that's going to take involvement by you now on a political level to help us. The water districts can't operate in a vacuum any longer, just as evidenced by your mayor being invited to the summit. I don't know what's going to come out of the summit, but that's one of the first times the mayors have actually gotten together and really talked about these things. So much more coordination on that level. Much more coordination on the conservation level. Your staff is already working on conservation in certain areas, you know, energy and some other areas. But water is going to be a real feature. And what you plan and how the developments get done and what residents do, a lot of that's within your control. And before we could kind of, well, you know, the city will take care of it. Well, again, the water agencies in the city have to be much more integrated on that, working back and forth. But ultimately, a lot of those things come at your dais here for efficient water use and development plans and things like that. There's going to be a much broader community discussion and even statewide discussion on future water supplies. You know, with the desal that Dennis Lothat mentioned, the call went out. You know, all of you need to get involved and work the Coastal Commission, let them know their support. We haven't had to do that in the past. So again, that's a critical measure. You know, you represent almost 300,000 people, and that's very powerful. And so to use that political power in a way that works on the water supply, and I don't mean that in a way to run over people, but to make sure that everyone knows that we're engaged in that political process. So that's probably the number one thing. I'll finish with number one, the political process of being engaged.
Mr. Bostan.
Thanks for asking that question. I think too many times people have not recognized the need to support reliable water supply. They've taken it as a given. And what you're hearing tonight is it's not a given, it's an effort that's regional and local. And it's so important to do this coordination so that we can come up with supply alternatives that are environmentally sensitive, but they can also provide reliable service. We're also dealing with changing conditions, global warming potentially, that will have other impacts on temperature, on snowpack, on water supply availability. That's one of the reasons we're looking at some other approaches to water supply. So I would suggest just support the need to continue to develop reliable water supplies. And in particular, try not to isolate only one alternative as the only alternative. I think too many times we want to pick an alternative saying, this is the one we'll support, but not these. And what we're finding is that we have to support them all. Not all of them will be successful, and that will help improve the odds of success.
Thank you, Mr. Bostan. And Mr. Watton, again, thank you very much for coming out this evening.